Hello, and welcome to In the Roud. Greetings and salutations, dear listeners. This is In the Roud, a folk song podcast, and I'm your host, Matt Quinn. Join me as we travel through the world of traditional folk song, one song per episode, in the order they appear in the Roud Index. Each episode usually features two guests, one providing an historical look at the song, while the other will be a singer from the folk music scene to talk about their own version of the song. This podcast is proud to be partly sponsored by the Traditional Song Forum. Meeting regularly both in person and online, the TSF provides a place for a variety of topics related to folk song collectors, singers, and many other aspects of folk song research to be presented and discussed. It's free to join, and most meetings are free to attend. Discover more about the TSF at www.tradsong.org. That's www.tradsong.org. But let's get going with this week's song. We're up to Roud 57, which is child ballad number 89, False Foodrage. What a great title, False Foodrage. Just one guest this week, as he's one of the only people who has ever sung this song, and also consequently done the research as well. So I hope you enjoy this interview with returning podcast guest Brian Peters. Hello and welcome back to In the Roud, Brian Peters. Hello.
Hello again, Matt.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, not too bad, really. Yeah, I've been doing a bit of this, bit of that, bit of singing, bit of researching, bit of hill walking, bit of cycling, bit of going to watch Stockport County. You know, it's been a never-ending panoply of entertainment.
Oh, lovely. You've had all that. I've been ill. My boiler broke. I had more car repairs. It's been a whirlwind of stuff going on for me, but I'm feeling better now. The car's fixed. My house is warm. And the weather's got warmer. The weather got warmer almost as soon as my boiler got fixed.
Of course it did.
Of course it did. It's like taking an umbrella out. You know, it won't rain. If you want the weather to warm up, you get your boiler fixed.
Definitely.
So I did spend a couple of really cold days in my house wearing like 4 layers.
Oh, horrible.
So that was fun. Nice to see you again. This is your second and last appearance in this season. We had you 6 weeks ago for The Unquiet Grave with Nick Dow, which had some very good reports about that one, so that's good. Yes, you're one of 3 people who are doing more than one episode in this season. We've got 3 from Steve Roud. There will be 3 from Steve Roud, 2 from Vic Gammon and 2 from you. So lovely to have you back for a second time. It's not even like the least collected song we've covered so far, yet it's pretty uncommon.
Yeah, quite a rare one, this.
Yeah, but at least you have done the work and sung it as well. Hence why you're the only interviewee, chatty person for this episode. But we have had episodes in previous seasons, those rarer child ballads, where Helen Lindley has come on, and it's been like, there's one version in child and nothing in Bronson. It's like, well, there we go. How can we eke this out for 35 minutes?
Yeah, there are things to be said about this one and about some of the background, sort of tangential background issues, which I think might be worth exploring briefly, of course, briefly.
Indeed. Although, yeah, we can sort of talk for a bit longer because I said you're the only person in this episode, so it's not like there are 2 people in the episode and therefore the episode's doubly long. But we'll see how we go.
Yeah, without wishing to sort of blow my own trumpet about it, when I looked up Mainly Norfolk, as we tend to do for these shows, I found that almost the entire entry of Mainly Norfolk consisted of album notes from one of my recordings.
Yes, you did do some rather extensive sleeve notes, didn't you, for that one? That's good. I love that sort of stuff, so that's fine. Right, so yeah, we're talking about um false food rage. Is it food rage, food ridge? Does anyone care?
Yeah, I mean the whole name is surrounded with sort of ambiguity because only one of the versions of Child's Three actually calls the character, even includes the character of false food rage. Then Child, his version A spells it foot rage with a T. His
Right.
generic title for the ballad spells it food rage, as in what sort of children get when they have too many red food colorants and they go a bit berserk. Whereas I, for purely whimsical reasons, decided 35 years ago, whatever it was, to spell it Foudrage. And as a result of which, somebody came up to me at a folk club once and said, I've been thinking about the name of that ballad and looking at food rage. And he's saying, I wonder if it's actually French. And it means fou, as in mad, de rage, so mad with rage. And I thought that was an incredibly ingenious suggestion. But then I had to say, well, actually, it was only me that decided to spell it like that anyway. So the whole thing collapsed in ruins, I'm afraid.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Love that. So, so yeah, false food rage, round 57, and but racing ahead to child 89. Yeah, it's so where did this song start for you? Did you? I don't imagine you heard someone singing this song.
I've only ever heard one other person singing this song, and that was long after I'd first dug it out. I just found it on the pages of Child. It might have been a little steer from David Atkinson, who is one of your other experts and a very, very old friend of mine. And every so often during the decades of my career, we'll have been sat up late at his place with, a bottle of wine or in former days, a bottle of malt whiskey and chat about this and that and balladry and setting the world to rights. And occasionally he would say to me, have you ever thought of looking at this one? And certainly Sir Aldingar was one that he suggested. So he may have suggested false food rage, but whatever. When I first turned to that page in Child and read through the story, I thought, this is an absolutely fantastic story and I've never heard it. Nobody ever sings it. And Martin Carthy said to me many, many years later, he thought it was one of the best, if not the best story in the whole of Child, although he never got round to recording it either.
Wow. Yeah. It's just yeah. I mean, it's had a look through myself. It's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, looking forward to discussing this. So yeah, basically, yeah, going through Child, looking at stuff. It's just a bit of light reading, Child, isn't it? You just
Yes.
just have a flip through it. I know that Vic Gammon did that with didn't quite do that with Pills to Purge Melancholy, but he did read all of Pills to Purge Melancholy because for a few years for his job he was commuting on the train, and he thought, well, I'll just take Pills to Purge Melancholy with me, Volume One. I'll just sit there and go through it and just see what there is. Literally, got to pass the time, which is
Yeah, that's
where
a great,
which is
great
where he
idea. That's
found,
the only way you really get to grips with a collection like that. I must admit, I've never done that with the pills, but I can see why you would want to.
which is where he found the earliest possible variant of Old MacDonald Had a Farm,
Ah, what a
called
find.
A Sweet Country Life, which we covered on the Patreon, and I did, yeah, it's on our Patreon, and I may release that as a podcast episode at some point. There is, for example, a gap coming up in the podcast in the autumn, in November. No, there isn't. There is, however, a gap coming up in the first season of next year, round about March of 2027, because we'll come to Roud 86, and there is no song linked to Roud 86.
Oh,
So I'm
right.
sure Steve could give some theory as to why that is. I mean, this was 50 years ago, he did this, but nevertheless, there's no 86. I've got a blank episode, so I might just release the history of Old MacDonald Had a Farm on the world. Was
Sounds like a great idea.
it's a good idea. But anyway, false food rage. Yeah, we've got so first of all, as you said, you thought this is a great ballad. Give us a rundown of the plot and what it's about.
Okay, well, when I do these plot rundowns, I like to look at all the versions and see what is common to all of them, because in this case, the versions actually vary in detail quite a lot. So the basics are a young man gets revenge on his father's killer and rescues his mother from the clutches of the murderer. That seems pretty well common to the versions that we have. The narratives start off by explaining that the mother, who is a queen, has had three rival suitors for her hand, and that they're all kings. And in some versions, the king who is rejected as the lover turns out to be the killer, but that is not what happens in my version, which I will explain about later. But having had her husband killed, sometimes on the actual wedding night, the queen, who is already pregnant, is kept prisoner because the murderer decides that if the child she is bearing is male, then obviously he will be in line to the succession. That was the way things worked in those days. So basically, she's kept under guard, under threat that the boy child, if such it be, is going to be killed immediately. So I'm. This is so solipsistic. I'm quoting an article I wrote myself about this ballad. That the sort of big picture is a dark and thrilling tale of lust, jealousy, murder, revenge, code words, and surrogate parenthood with a satisfying conclusion. So there you are. So as I say, I'll fill in some of the details of the alternative versions as we go.
Great. Yeah, it sounds like could make a film out of that or something. Could do.
Oh, definitely.
So some of these are cinematic quality. We did the talked about that with the Child Morris episode because that was turned into an episode. Well, it was one of the books and subsequent episode of Derek Jacobi, Brother Cadfile, has the Child Morris plot. So there's always scope for these things to be made into.
Definitely, this would make a great film.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how far back can we trace this song? Basically, is a question.
It's a little bit fuzzy because there's a certain amount of conjecture involved. We certainly don't have any kind of a broadside. It's not one of these that goes back to a 17th century broadside, as quite a few of these child ballads do. But by sort of working out the ages of the people in the chain of communication, you take it back to probably the middle of the 18th century and possibly a bit further back than that. So yeah, early to middle 18th century.
Oh yes, I assume that's from the is it version C in Child? That's the Harris manuscripts.
That's the Harris one, which I'll be talking
Yeah,
about in a bit more detail. Yeah,
an old Perthshire nurse about 1790. So
yeah,
if she's old in 1790, to take it back however many decades and
exactly.
maybe yeah. Okay, so that's still good going though. There's a lot more recent than that and a few older, so that's in the middle somewhere. Um, and I mean, going by the Roud Index, this has basically stayed in Scotland. This song, as far as we can tell, this is Scotland.
Yep, there's nothing else. There are three texts from Scotland. There's three tunes which overlap partly with the three texts. All of those are from Scotland. Never found anywhere else at all. Although, of course, Child being Child has found several versions from Scandinavia. He writes that
Ah,
it's especially popular in Denmark. There are 23 different texts from Denmark. And although they differ in quite a few features from the Scottish false Foodrage, they do have in common three main points. It's a father who's murdered by his rival, it's a boy who's passed off as a girl, and it's a boy who grows up to be a teenager who then kills the murderer. So those are in common with Scandinavia.
and there is one entry for USA in the index, but I think that's a mistake. Because it's a song called "The Orphan Girl," and there's no other things like that in the index for Route 57. They're all false Foodrage or Eastmere King, and nothing like "The Orphan Girl," and that's from a USA, North Carolina So I reckon that's probably a spelling, a typo on the Roud number when they put that in the index. So I'll bring that up with Lord Roud at some point.
Yes, you do that. It's worth checking, but it was one that passed me by, I must admit.
Yeah. So yeah, all in Scotland. As you said, no field recordings, just some books, a manuscript, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, it just doesn't really seem to have taken off for whatever reason.
No,
Always a rare ballad.
and still hasn't, despite your best efforts. It's but yeah, never know. People might listen to this and then go, let's sing this. So yeah, so it's not there isn't yeah, I said because there's three versions in Child. So history wise, there isn't really much to say, is there?
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Okay, in that case, Brian Peters, off you go.
Okay, so briefly, there are three in Child, as you say, A, B, and C. There's the famous Mrs. Brown, who people these days tend to refer to as Anna Gordon Brown. And she had, I'll say a bit more about that in a minute, but she had a 35 verse version of it that was also printed in Scots minstrelsy, the Scottish border, although he dicked around with it quite a lot as he tended to. Child's version B is from William Motherwell's manuscript. That's 18 verses long. Version C is from the Harris manuscript, which I'm definitely going to say more about. That's a four verse fragment. So I will say a bit more about the text in detail. So going back to A from Anna Gordon Brown, Child actually wasn't very impressed with this. It's certainly the fullest version of the tale, but he made a few disparaging remarks, such as, "The form in which we have received it is an enfeebled one, without much flavour or colour." And he hinted that Anna Gordon might have rewritten it. He talks a bit about a ballad, a fake ballad that was popular in her era, called Hardicanute, which I presume is about some part of the Canute dynasty, the guy who sat in his chair on the seashore with his feet in the waves to prove a point about the infallibility of the monarch. But Child basically thought that Anna Gordon had somehow rewritten or recast this ballad and was influenced by a particular line about a grey goshawk that occurs in this Hardicanute fake ballad. So whatever, yeah, I mean, there are people who question quite a lot of Anna Gordon's ballads, including Steve Gardam, who you had on the Lord Bateman episode. Child generally really likes her versions. He said something about there is no ballads are superior than those of Mrs. Brown or something like that. But some people do believe that she, as you know, she had a literary background. She was well educated, and she might well have improved some of the other ballads as well as this one. So her story, you start off with the three kings who are the rivals for the hand of a woman who doesn't actually receive a name. But then in this version, independently apparently of this business of the three rival kings, there's a rebellion amongst the noblemen, and no reason is given for that at all, which is maybe why Child didn't really like this version. So these uppity noblemen decide that they want to kill King Honor, who is the guy who has won the heart of the Queen, and so they do it in traditional ballad fashion by casting lots, or in Scottish terms, casting cavils, and false Foodrage, who is one of these rebellious barons, is chosen. He's actually called Foodrage in this version. And then there's a bit of a lengthy and wordy episode about how he sort of sneaks into the castle and kills the night watchman and enacts the murder. Again, this is all a bit wordy, and another reason why Child maybe didn't like it. He also said about the plot is that it was prosaic, not at all ballad-like, and evidently corrupted. So there you are. He's not impressed with it, but on the other hand, I thought this was by far the best version of the story. So the things that are specific to this version, as opposed to the general plot that I laid out, is that the Queen, her husband having been murdered, pleads for her life to be spared until the baby is born, And then false Foodrage says, well, all right then, but if it's turns out to be a boy child, he'll mount the gallows pin. I'm not quite sure how a newborn babe is meant to mount the gallows pin independently, but maybe he'd have had a helping hand. So the Queen is placed under guard for the duration of her pregnancy, but she manages to get the guards drunk and escapes. She escapes through a window, which is a bit of a struggle because she's heavily pregnant at the time, and she gives birth in the pigsty to a baby who turns out to be a boy. So then there's a little bit of a hiatus. The townsfolk get to hear what's happened, and they decide that they need to give the Queen a bit of a helping hand. So they, in their turn, draw lots. So who is going to go and help the Queen, who's presumably still camped out in the pigsty? A guy called Wise William. It's a bit of good luck, really, that it was somebody wise who got selected by lot. And he decides he won't go himself. He's going to send his wife, who is also pregnant. So we can see where this is going. And sorry, she's not pregnant. She's just had her baby, which is a girl. So obviously, when she arrives, the plan is that she will exchange babies with the Queen. So the Queen now has a girl child. False Foodrage is going to spare the child, and meanwhile, Wise William's wife is going to take the boy child away with her. And she then, with the help of Wise William, brings up this boy to do manly stuff like wielding the bow and the brand. And meanwhile, the girl child will be raised by the Queen in, the usual gender stereotypical fashion. And the interesting thing is that the Queen and Wise William's wife devised this system of code words. So when they meet at the marketplace, as the lyric goes, instead of saying, how's my little boy getting on? They're going to say, how is my goshawk doing? And then the reciprocal question is, well, he's doing okay, but how is my turtle dove doing? The goshawk and the turtle dove obviously being the boy child and the girl child, respectively. So there's then the passage of quite a lot of time. You have a sort of stop verse about when days come on and the years come on. So the boy is now starting to grow up. Wise William takes him hunting and shows him this castle. I mean, talk about, having the images of the plot in your head. I can just imagine this castle that Wise William is showing him, and it's towering up on some rocky outcrop. And Wise William says, that castle, that should be yours by rights, because the guy who's in that castle has not only murdered your father, but is keeping your mother prisoner there. So the boy, who I say is probably now a teenager maybe, he climbs up the castle wall. Again, very filmic. I have a good friend in Canada called Paul Morris, who quite a number of our mutual friends will know very well if they've toured over there. He's a former paratrooper, and he said to me after hearing me sing this, I can just see him climbing the castle wall. He's thrown up the grappling irons and he's shinning up there. And it really is that kind of ballad. It's brilliant. So
Fantastic.
he climbs up the castle wall. He sees false Foodrage strolling around on the battlements and stabs him through the heart. And there's this ending that kind of seals everything up quite nicely. He says, right, I'm going to give Wise William, who helped out, I'm going to give him half of all my lands, and then he gets married to the turtle dove. So the two swapped children get married. So it's a very neat and tidy ending.
Excellent. Yeah, we everything wrapped up with a bow at the end, leaving no.
Absolutely. Wrapped up with a bow, it exactly encapsulates it.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. So that is basically the entire plot of the Mrs. Brown one, is it? The version A in China.
Yeah, that's 89A. I can go through the other two much more briefly because they are shorter. The 89B, which is Motherwell, you have the kings are pretty much the same kings. Anna Gordon called them King Easter and King Westmuir and King Honor. And Motherwell's they're called Eastmuir, Westmuir, and King of Honoree. But they're all rivals for the Queen's Hand. But it's actually instead of it having anything to do with the nobleman, it's King Eastmuir kills King Honor, who is the kind of victorious suitor, kills him himself. on the wedding night, and there's a really good verse here which I've decided to incorporate into my own version. This is talking about the Queen. This maid she awaked in the middle of the night, was in a drowsy dream. She found her bride's bed swim with blood, but her good lord was slain. So that's a really evocative verse that you don't get in Anna Brown. So
Right.
then there's a bit of an odd episode where the murderer, which is King Eastmuir, tells the Queen, or she believes anyway, that she's going to be accused of her own husband's murder. But he says, well, come with me, I'll take you away on my horse, and then nobody's going to accuse you of anything. And then there's a similar, although less detailed, account of the birth of the boy child. There's nothing about a pigsty, but there is an exchange of children. They don't bother with the business about the goshawk and the turtle dove. They just swap the children. And when the boy is 16, he goes and kills his father's murderer in the garden. And there's one other really interesting verse here, which is when he is confronted by this teenage boy who's about to kill him. The real thing that I really found fascinating is that he doesn't know who he's facing. So he says, "What aileth thee, my bonny boy? What aileth thee at me? I'm sure I never did thee wrong. Thy face I never did see." So his nemesis is there standing in front of him with a damn great sword, and he's just said, like, who are you? Surprise, surprise. So that's the end of that one.
Yeah. And so that ends with, yes, thou murdered my father dear when scarce conceived was I. Thou murdered my father dear when scarce conceived was me. So then he slew that Eastmere king beneath that garden tree. So
Exactly.
ends in bloodshed. Whereas the
Yes.
last verse, always like last verses, last verse in the Mrs. Brown one, he has rewarded wise William with the best of half his land, and so has he the turtle dove with the truth of his right hand.
Yeah, I think that should probably be the troth or something. It's a
It
bit of an
sound
odd.
yeah, troth sounds more plausible, doesn't it, than truth?
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, when I arranged it, I really wanted to sing that verse, but I just said with a ring from off his hand, which seemed a bit more. As
Yeah,
I will explain in a bit, I do approve of sort of modernising these things a bit if it makes them more understandable.
absolutely.
So let's
And then there's four verses from the Harris manuscripts.
Yes, and so here we have again the first two kings that have the same names, the Eastmuir king and the Westmuir king, but the other character, instead of being the king of honor, is called the King of Love, except that they spell love Luve. So I tend to think it's like one of these crooners who Barry White or something, who goes love like that. So there's the usual thing about them casting cavils, but then nothing really. It doesn't really go very far with it. They just say that the two kings, Eastmuir and Westmuir, decide jointly to murder the King of Love. But then the Eastmuir king basically chickens out, and the Westmuir king does the murder on his own, and that's as far as it goes. That's all there is of that one. Now, the interesting thing about the Harris manuscript, and you did allude to this before
Oh yeah,
about the elderly nurse, the Harris manuscript was there were actually two of them. There were two sisters called Amelia and Jane Harris who lived in the 19th century, and they had heard a really interesting repertoire of ballads from their mother. And both of them independently decided to write these down for posterity. Amelia Harris had wrote them down in 1859 and sent them to a Scots antiquarian called Aytoun. That disappeared for ages, although it then did resurface. 1873, her sister Jane Harris wrote down the repertoire and sent that to Francis James Child. Now, the point about these ballads is that, as you said, their mother had learned them as a child before the age of 10 when she moved house. She'd learned them from an elderly nurse called Janny Scott. And it was this nurse who had this apparently huge repertoire of ballads. And in fact, the mother had forgotten quite a lot of them, which is why you only get a four-verse fragment of what they call the Eastmuir King.
right. Yeah, very good.
So we could go to the tunes now if you like. I was going to take the first tune and then I think you were going to take over from there.
Sure, yeah, go for it.
Now, the interesting thing about the tunes, um, The first is from the Harris manuscript because one of the things about a Harris manuscript is that Jane Harris notated the tunes when she sent her manuscript to Child, and there is some debate about what her level of musical competence was, which I'll come back to. But as far as Bronson is concerned, he prints the tune from the Harris manuscript first, although there is a slight difference from the tune as printed in a book that I was presented with by a ballad singer called Anne Nielsen many years ago, which is called the Harris Repertoire, and was put together by a great Scots ballad scholar called Emily Lyle about 25 years ago. And that has all the verses and all the tunes from both sisters' manuscripts. So what Bronson has, excuse me, this is his number one, 89 number one, which he calls East Me O King. It goes, He's your king and was your king and king of love all three. It's they cast cavils them among about a gay lady. Now, if you look at the Harris book, it's just slightly different. It goes, He's your king and was your king and king of love all three. Oh, shit.
King of Love all
Damn.
three.
Three, that's it. Thank you very much, Matt. You rescued me there. It's that one note that's different. If you actually look at, I've got a facsimile here of the actual manuscript that Jane wrote down, and that note is actually slightly ambiguous. It's kind of partly on the line and partly not on the line. Oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed that I got that wrong, but my grateful thanks. So this it doesn't really matter which is the correct one because we all bash these things about anyway. But I think the significant thing about this Harris tune is that's one of the ones that Child included. It's kind of appendix at the very end of his whole collection, so it's in volume 5 of the Dover edition.
That's
And
right.
although Child, people tend to say, well, he wasn't interested in the music, he was a literary scholar and that's all he cared about. But it just occurs to me that if he hadn't cared about the tunes, he wouldn't have printed them. And I think what actually happened was that most of his sources, like Motherwell and Scott and so on, didn't have tunes. So I think he published actually what the ones that he could find. So I think it's 55 tunes that he has at the back of the book, and the Harris ballads contribute 23 of them. There were actually another 8 from the Harris manuscripts that Child didn't use, but they're really, really significant in terms of the tunes that are in Child's actual collection. So going back to Jane Harris's abilities or otherwise as a transcriber, the editor of this book I have called the Harris Repertoire wrote rather witheringly that the problem of editing these tunes is to guess the intention of the transcriber through her own semi-competent notation. So that's pretty damning, really.
Well, you get some things like I've got a book on my shelf which I'm sure a lot of people have got called A Sussex Tune Book, compiled by Vic Gammon and Annie Loughran, and it's a load of traditional tunes from Sussex. Vic and Annie went round a load of manuscripts from sort of these old traditional musicians and these manuscripts that were in museums or churches, or whatever, and cherry picked all the good tunes and put them in this book. Except, yeah, it's compiled by the two of them, but on the front cover it does say music drawn by Martin Carthy, because it's all hand drawn musical notation
Right.
drawn by Martin Carthy. But he doesn't drive, and so he did it all on train journeys. And there's occasional moments in that book where you read a tune and you go, that note doesn't fit, doesn't quite work there. I do wonder, as my dad put this out, I wonder whether the train hit a bump at that moment and Martin's pen just went up to the next bit on the stave, and whether occasionally we get an odd note in a tune, whether that's original or whether that's Martin Carthy writing it out on a train, you know.
Yeah, well,
So,
having worked with these old fiddle manuscripts myself, I know there's one from Derbyshire where there are places where I could be pretty sure that the guy just notated it wrong.
yeah,
You'll find suddenly a bar with 3 beats in it instead of 4, and these are meant to be dance tunes. So you have to bear in mind that the original transcriber back in the mists of time didn't actually transcribe it right. We just don't know.
indeed so. And then that tune, the Harris tune, has then kind of taken on a different life, hasn't it, as well, through other folk singers.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure many of your listeners will have recognised it as the tune that's to which Willie Winsbury is commonly sung. I don't have a copy of the words of Willie Winsbury in front of me, so I'm not going to attempt that. But there is a tale. Now, this might be apocryphal, it might not be, but there is a tale that Andy Irvine was looking to put together a version of Willie Winsbury decades ago. And the apocryphal tale is that he was looking through the tunes at the back of Child, where there is actually a tune for Willie Winsbury, but he turned over two pages at once because I don't know, they were stuck together with chewing gum or something. So he picked the wrong tune. He settled on False Foodrage instead. I think that may be a bit of an exaggeration, that possibly he just looked at the False Foodrage tune and thought, oh, I like that one better than the authentic tune. I'll use that, which is something many of us will have done. But that is where that tune will be familiar from, I think, to many people is Willie Winsbury.
Yes, and I was just checking. Yeah, I haven't got the words for the Andy Irving one, but there are loads of words for William Winsbury on Mainly Norfolk, Route 64. So actually, this summer we'll be coming to William Winsbury.
Well, I hope whoever is the expert will say that the tune belongs to False Foodrage.
Justice for false fooderage.
Yeah.
But yeah, like for example, yeah, there was a lady in the west, and she was dressed in green, and she leaned over her father's castle wall for to see the ships sail in. What is wrong with you? Her father said, you look so pale and wan, for you must have some sore sickness, or have lain with some young man. It's that, but the kind of the Andy Irving one, and others, yeah.
Yeah, the tune has been pinched. If I was on my soapbox, I would be going fake, fake. I tell you. But as you know, I have a very relaxed attitude to ballad fakery and
That's
editorial
right.
intervention.
And I recognised it instantly because I, from that, but also from singing of three, well, the CD of three of my favourite singers, the trio of Shepherd, Spears, and Watson,
Great.
Arthur Watson, Pete Shepherd, Tom Spears, not in that order, and I think it's on their second album that Tom Spears sings a version of Earl Richard, which is Route 47. So we covered that last season, Young Hunting, Earl Richard, and with that one it starts. Young hunting is a Earl Richard is a hunting gone as fast as he could ride. A hunting horn hung round his neck and a sharp sword by his side. But he's come unto my lady's gate, he's turned at the pin. There was none so ready as my lady to go down and let him in. So it appears to not maybe not an all-purpose tune, but it seems to work. It's clearly a good tune, you know. That
Yeah.
it's been applied by other people to other songs, and it still works, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent. Now, I think you were going to sing the other two tunes out Bronson, weren't you?
Oh yes, that's right. Let me load up Bronson. Who sings? So yeah, that's the first one in Bronson is that East Milking Harris that became William Winsbury, etc. Number two, False Foodrage, Christie. Is that a Christie manuscript or was that something else?
Christie's Balladeres, I think. I can't remember exactly what year that came up.
Okay, 1876 possibly. I think that's the date in
Yeah,
Bronson
okay.
here. Christie 1, 1876, page
Yeah.
172. Sung by an old Banffshire woman who died in 1866, aged about 80. So born in 1786. Is my maths right there?
Yeah. Sounds like
She was
right.
80 in
70.
1786.
Yeah. So again, we're taking it back to the 18th century.
Yeah, traditional in her family. So, and we've got just one verse, one text provided next to the tune for Bronson. So, yeah, da 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 da. So yeah, this is that was just me skimming through it briefly. So this is there are similarities.
Definitely. I mean,
And
I think Bronson plays them down a bit. He says something about they're not close, but of the same family. But when I heard that phrase about bam ba da ba dum ba dum, I'm
yeah,
definitely hearing the Harris tune.
exactly. So we've got King Easter, King Wester, and King Honor.
Yeah, well, they
on this
pinched the
one.
text out of Sir Walter Scott, which is basically from Anna Gordon anyway. So it's
Oh,
not
it does say
it's not an
Christie's text.
independent text.
Sorry, it does say Christie's text is Scots abridged. So yeah, yeah, da da. Okay. King Easter courted for her lands, King Wester for her fee, King Honor for her comely face, and for her fair body. So the second half of that is almost a copy of bits of the Harris tune. Da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. That's very reminiscent.
Exactly. That's one thing that I've talked to Vic Gammon about this, that sometimes the similarities of the tunes are only really apparent when you sing them. Bronson has his own methods for assigning tunes to groups, which tend to be, what note does the first passage end on, and what note does the second passage end on. But sometimes you find that the phrases are actually jumbled up. So, as you say, what could be the first phrase of one tune becomes the second part of a different person's tune. So
Yeah.
when you sing it, you can really hear that similarity.
Yeah. And then version 3, False Foodrage Blakey manuscript, Scotland, 1578, written here.
I
Is that?
don't think that's. I think that's the number of the ballad rather than the year. But again, I don't actually know what year the Blakey's manuscript was put
Oh, I
together.
don't know. But then it says 1578, comma, number 78.
Oh, well, okay.
But then it
I'm
says
still not
source.
convinced. I just don't think that's from
No.
1578.
It then says source not specified. So
Right.
that's all. Anyway, and there's no text applied, so I'll just use the same text, the Christie Scott one. King Easter courted for her lands, King Easter for her fee, King Honor for her comely face, and for her fair body. It ends in a different, not quite different key, but it ends on a different tonal center
It
than it
does, yeah.
starts.
It kind of suddenly decides it might be a major tune after all at the end.
Yeah, gone from major to let's go. Yeah, it's kind of D modal sort of thing because it hasn't got the. If it's in D, it hasn't got the third and seventh of the scale.
Yeah,
Or if it's G but in like whatever, then it's got like it's missing the fourth and seventh of the scale. But then at the end, da 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 da, definitely lands on that G. However you want to describe the modal center of that tune
yeah,
is
yes,
beyond
quite.
me. But there are bits there that's not. And Bronson writes the second phrase shows kinship with the preceding variants. Da 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 da. I don't think so, personally. I don't think there's any
Yeah, I don't
kinship.
either.
You know, what a load of rubbish. Come on, Bronson.
Yeah, what did he know?
What did he know exactly? But anyway, there's definitely the first two out of the three are clearly linked. That third one, Bronson thought that it was linked, but I don't, and that's all there is. And
Right.
then, and then in Child, as you said, the tune at the end of Volume 5 of Child is just the Harris manuscript again.
Yeah.
So there we go. And so, anything else you want to say about the sort of the stuff to do with this song before we come to you?
No, I think we've covered the history such as it is. I mean, normally at this point, obviously, we'd be recommending recordings of soul singers, and there aren't any. So that was easy.
Indeed, yes. Recommended listening. There is none on the traditional side of things. This song has not been found in the oral tradition whatsoever. At least not in terms of recordings. Oral tradition in terms of the Harris sisters singing it, but not in terms of early 19th, sort of early 20th century. Yeah,
Mm.
and so so consequently, this song lay dormant until approximately 1992, when it appears on a CD, and I have the cassette, "The Seeds of Time" by one Brian Peters.
Yes, that's right. As I say, having found the ballad and decided I wanted to sing it, I put together this version. Also in 1992, I wrote an article about it for English Dance and Song. Dave Arthur was the editor at the
Oh
time, and
wow,
he,
excellent.
yeah, well, I kind of had the ear of Dave Arthur, so and I got my picture on the back cover of the magazine. So I talked about basically restoring false food rage, and I wrote this sort of plea for ballads at the time. 1992, they'd kind of really gone out of fashion. If you heard people talk about ballads, they'd nearly always add the descriptor boring beforehand. So it
Oh,
was
okay.
boring ballads and, Tamlin's too bloody long and all this. And so I was really making a bit of a case for the importance of ballads as part of a revival singer's repertoire. So I quote myself here. I do apologise for this, but I couldn't put it better now. It said, the other thing was, I should just put this in, is that everybody was obsessed with the idea of relevance. Songs had to be relevant, and there was a notorious review of the CD release of Nick Jones's Penguin Eggs. I won't tell you the name of the reviewer, they're not live anymore. But basically, this reviewer said, well, this stuff's not relevant anymore. Courting is a pleasure. Who cares about that kind of stuff these days? So I was kind of really needled by this. So that my point about ballads like False Food Rage is that they just don't date because they were never topical in the first place. So this is quoting myself. Their mythical kings, beasts, and apparitions had little more relevance to the everyday life of a 19th century farm worker than to a software salesman in 1992. So the point about these is that they're not relevant. They're escapist. They're fantasy, but
Yeah.
they are, as I again quoting myself, they always come up sounding fresh because they are simply good stories whose characters act out the perennial strengths and failings of the human condition. So that was to me why ballads like False Food Rage were in 1992 and are in 2026 still important and vital and riveting.
Yeah, I have the same argument when it comes to films. I've seen films that I've loved where people have said I didn't like that because I couldn't relate to the main characters. And you think, well, so you're only going to watch films about bank tellers, are you then, or something? you
Yeah.
know, or whatever. I picked an occupation out of my brain then, but it's that sort of thing. If it doesn't matter if you can't relate to it, it's a good story, and it should make you involved even if you can't relate to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Of course we do. We still watch Shakespeare plays. We still, some of us at least, still find the Grimm's fairy tales fascinating. Although they are they in the way they're in this what some people call ballad world. These ballads, it's a timeless condition, and it's often talking about the aristocracy and so on. It doesn't relate directly to our lives today, but they're just the plots are really fascinating, and False Food Rage is, as Martin Carthy said, one of the very best.
yeah, it's a really irritating point that I'm thinking about, not relating to things, or is it relevant? And I know people that claim not to find horror films scary, like things like The Exorcist and also ones about religion, because they don't believe in any religion, or then consequently they're not scared by it. And I think, well, still, it's still scary, even if you don't believe in this stuff.
Yeah, that's a really
Anyway,
odd take,
yeah.
is that?
So I don't get most people's hot takes like that. So, yeah. But so yeah, had a. I mean, you didn't have a go at this. You completed a go at this song.
Yeah, I think when I started to put my own repertoire together, I was always really interested in the ballads. I think my first album had got a version of Lamkin and the Demon Lover on, which I can't listen to now, but I was interested in that stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
And it was also kind of quite important that I wanted my ballads to be different from anybody else's. So, I know you'll hear really quite distinguished singers saying, "Oh, well, I do this ballad and I actually do Nick Jones's version because you couldn't better Nick Jones." But that was never what I was about. I didn't want to do Nick Jones or Martin Carthy's version of anything. I wanted to dig up stuff that nobody was doing, whether it was just a variant of quite a common ballad like Barbara Allen, or even better, a rare ballad like False Food Rage that nobody seemed to have done. So I read through the story, and the things that I think really made it special for me were the heroism of the mother. And you've had this discussion on your program before about how in some of these ballads, the women, far from being put upon, are the central character, like in Tamlin being a classic example.
Yeah,
Janet is the hero of Tamlin, and here we have the queen, who is the mother of the boy, is the central character in this ballad. So she shows incredible ingenuity and heroism in having this plot to get the guards drunk and outwitting the murderer with the swapping the children and so on. So that was really central to me, and I did really enjoy this plan for the code words between the children, the goshawk and the turtle dove. And then the other thing that really appealed was something I mentioned before, that the villain doesn't know who's come to kill him. I found that really fascinating. So there's also this story arc. You start off with savagery and bloodshed, and the bed sheets are all completely soaked in blood. But then you have this. I'll admit it's a bit contrived, but I still really like the happy ending where the goshawk and the turtle dove get married with the ring or the troth from off his hand. So I want to mention Chris Coe here, not least because she was one of only three revival versions that we've found of this ballad. And I
yeah.
should say that my fascination with ballads began with hearing Fair Convention do Sir Patrick Spens on the radio in 1969, continued through Steeleye Span's ballads to Nick Jones to Martin Carthy, and then to Chris Coe, who I think was one of the most riveting ballad singers I ever heard. I think her work is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, well, I agree about Chris. I mean, yeah, she was one of my. I had singing lessons with her a few times on when I was on the folk degree at Newcastle,
Oh, lovely.
and it was just fantastic. And one of my favourite ballad performances is her on. I think it's Out of Season, Out of Rhyme, the Pete and Chris Coe LP, where she sings a song we've actually skimmed over on the podcast. We've Steve Roud missed it out. Child 86, Young Benji. I think Chris singing that on Out of Season, Out of Rhyme is phenomenal.
I quite agree. That was my favourite ballad at the time as well. And I said that to Chris once. We used to chat about ballads, and she said, you know, oh, thanks very much and so on. But she said she'd performed it to a non-folk audience. Chris was involved in all kinds of things, including theatre and so on.
Mm.
She'd sung it to an audience who weren't used to ballads, and she said they were just shocked, completely shocked and silent at the end. They could not believe that such violence could be found in a folk song, for heaven's sake. So yes, I loved your
Yeah,
Benji.
yeah, absolutely.
So Chris, okay, is the does a version of False Foodrage. It's nothing like mine at all. She uses the Harris tune that we've already sung, and she uses basically Child's B text from Motherwell, although like me, she sort of cherry picked a few bits from elsewhere. But we had a chat about False Foodrage, and I had my key points about what really attracted me to the ballad, but she had just a different point of view, which is the beauty of going into these old ballads is that every singer is going to have a different take on what the ballad means to them and how they want to mould it to their own idea of the story. So this is actually on Mainly Norfolk as well. She wrote about her False Foodrage, the fact that he is referred to in the ballad as the grey goshawk, and she writes, I sang the phrase for 20 years without understanding its significance. Then one day while singing it in a club, I realised that a falconry hawk, like a falconry hawk, I should say, the boy had been removed from the nest as a baby and taught to kill as a weapon of revenge. Now, that's typical Chris. I hadn't thought of that specifically, but Chris really thought deeply about ballads,
Yeah,
as you can tell.
I'd spotted that myself, and I was going to mention that if you didn't. So yeah, that's definitely
But
what
there
I thought
was
about.
one other thing that Chris said when we were talking about False Foodrage. She said to me that another key point in the ballad was the magical element where the boy grows up supernaturally fast. So the verse she has is, the boy grew as big in 1 year's space as some boys grow in three. And she was very taken with this verse of the ballad. And many years later, I went through the versions of False Foodrage and I couldn't find that verse at all. Um, and then I don't know if I found it or somebody else mentioned it. I was talking to somebody, and it turns out that it's actually from Gel and Graham, which is the very next ballad in Child. It's from the C version of Gel and Graham, but it's
Ah,
what I think has happened is that Chris, and again, we've all done this, she's incorporated a verse from a different ballad, the next one in the book, and then she's just sort of forgotten about it. It's become part of her version of the ballad. So to Chris, that bit about the boy growing unnaturally fast became absolutely central to False Food Rage. That's really interesting, anyway.
that's great. And not only is it the next child ballad, it is the next Roud number. And so next week we'll have Steve Roud talking about John and Graham, and that will come up again, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yes, I hope it will. So,
so
so that was Chris. So going back to my version, I banged around the text a lot, as I think I said before. I really wanted to incorporate the verse about the bed swimming with blood, and the verse about false Foudray's not recognizing the boy who's come to kill him. So those I pulled from the B version and stuck them into the Anna Gordon A version. So there was then a question about a tune. I'd already decided I wanted to sing the ballad, but I thought, well, here's this tune that is absolutely authentic and traditional to it, but everybody knows it from William Winsbury or from the Richard Thompson song Farewell,
well, yes.
which used the same tune. And it is a lovely tune, but I thought, well, A, it's kind of a bit well known. This is me many years ago now, and I was a bit of a sort of rebel, and I thought, well, I'm not going to sing it to that bloody tune just because it's the traditional one. I thought the tune is beautiful, but it's not dark enough. That was what I was after, was an edgier, darker tune. So I had this tune going around in my head, and this is one that you've already talked about quite recently in your series, and it's the tune of a ballad called Lord Gregory, which is a version of The Lass of Roch Royal. And I've got a shout out here to a singer who used to sing in Manchester when I was a resident at Harry Boardman's wonderful folk club in the 1980s. One of his other residents was an Irish singer called Joe Kerrins. Now, Joe was just a fantastic singer. He sang with such gusto and humour, but if it came to a serious ballad, he could really put that over. And one of my proudest achievements, actually, on the folk scene was I got Joe Kerrins booked at the National Folk Festival just once,
Ah,
and the National had never booked him before that because they said, well, he's got a bit of a reputation as a no-show. He's a bit flaky. So I said, I'll make sure Joe turns up. And I was in one of the committee rooms at Sutton Bonington on the Friday night of the National Festival where Joe sang his first song, and I could look around the audience and just jaws were dropping everywhere. People were saying, God, who the hell is this singer and why have we never heard him before? So that's my little shout out to the wonderful Joe Kerrins. He used to sing Lord Gregory in that folk club. I think he'd learned it from a singer called Ollie Conway, who appears on early ballads in Ireland. And it's a very dramatic tune, but the honest truth is, and bear in mind, I say I was young and green, I couldn't really understand what Lord Gregory was about. I loved to hear Joe sing it, but I didn't quite get all this business about the exchanging pocket handkerchiefs and all that business. So I thought, great tune. The ballad doesn't really appeal to me, so I'm not going to learn Lord Gregory. But then it kind of somehow serendipitously came together in my head. I've got False Food Rage is a ballad that I want to have a different tune for. Lord Gregory's tune is kind of looking for a home in my head as well. So I married the two up, and I'm not going to give you a preview because I'm going to be singing it properly in a little while anyway. So that's and the amazing thing, and he said, "Where did you get that tune from?" And of all people, Rod Stradling was a huge fan of Bess Cronin, who sang Lord Gregory in the first place. And he said, "Oh my God, it's Lord Gregory, isn't it?" But he hadn't spotted it. So that says something quite interesting about the way you don't always pick a familiar tune if it's married to a different set of words.
yeah, I've had that as well. I've heard a song and thought, "Oh, that's a good tune," and then years later thought, "Oh no, that's the tune from that other song as well." It's just completely, it gives, yeah, the text you apply the tune to just gives the tune a whole new flavour.
Yeah, yes, it does. I might have tweaked the tune a little bit as well, but nothing major.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got the tune. I got a text. I decided I wanted to keep False Food Rage in it. And again, I can't really tell you why. It was 35 years ago. I could have just gone down the route of making King Eastmuir into the murderer, and it would have been a lot simpler. But I kind of like the fact that Child had called the ballad False Food Rage. On this whim that I explained, I decided to spell it differently with a U instead of an O. Um, but I didn't really go for this baronial uprising. I just thought there's no explanation for it. Why has there been a rebellion? So I faked it. I faked a verse, and I my verse goes, King Ismail swore a dreadful oath all on the wedding day, and he has sent for false food rage the king all for to slay. So false food rage has now become a hired assassin, and I unashamedly made that bit up, but it kind of made the whole thing make sense.
Yeah, great. That's fine. Yeah.
So I don't know if if I was doing the ballad now, starting from scratch, I might not make the same decision, but it doesn't matter really. You make the decision you make at the time. I also anglicised the lyrics somewhat. I could go into the whole controversy about whether English people should anglicise Scottish ballads. To me, I think for the most part, I just avoid any ballads that are Scottish and in the Scots language. I just think you can ruin them by anglicising them. But there were ballads like this where the Scots is not actually very heavy, and also I thought, well, nobody from Scotland has taken up this ballad anyway, so I think I've got a right to it if that isn't too presumptuous. So I decided to sing it, and I anglicised the lyrics, got it all ready for performance, and the first time I sang it out was at a ballad session, and it was a festival that used to occur at Redditch in the West Midlands, which was not the biggest festival, but it was real quality. Angie Bladen used to run it, and she really was an enthusiast for traditional singing. So I found myself in this ballad session confronted by Roy Harris, who was a dear friend of mine for the whole of of my career in the folk world until he died. So there was Roy Harris, there was Ray Fisher, there was Martin Carthy, and there was Peter Bellamy.
Wow.
So that was my audience for the first performance of False Food Rage. And at the end of it, Martin said, and this goes back to something we were talking about before. He said, the amazing thing about that ballad is not how long it is. I'd taken 7.5 minutes to sing it. It's not how long it is, but how short it is, considering everything that happens. He said Hollywood would have taken 2 hours to tell that story, which I thought was really, really interesting and profound. So I think this is part of my defence of the ballad as a genre. It doesn't matter if they're a bit longer than your average song. I certainly wouldn't have the balls to do a whole set of 7 or 8 or 9 minute ballads, but in their place, the length doesn't matter. It just flies by when you're immersed in the story.
Absolutely, I completely agree. I've always firmly believed that, yeah, it's the length doesn't matter. It's about if the song is interesting enough and is delivered well enough, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah, dead right. I had another experience much more recently, actually. It was about 6 years ago. I went to interview Peggy Seeger at a home in Iffley near Oxford for a book I was involved in. I was asking her about all the early history of the folk revival, and at the end of it, she said, "You sing ballads, don't you? Sing me a ballad." So I thought, "Oh my God, right." So I thought around a bit, and I said, okay, I'll do you False Food Rage. And she said, I've got a guitar here if you want to borrow it. And although I often accompany False Food Rage, I thought, no, I'm going to do it unaccompanied on this occasion. And I've often done it unaccompanied since. And Peggy sat there through the 7.5 minutes with her eyes shut. And at the end of it, she said, not, oh, what a fantastic rendition, which I suppose part of me was hoping for. But what she actually said was, that is such a fantastic story. And one thing I know about Ewan and Peggy was that their great dictum was that when you hear a ballad, you should never notice the singer. You should always hear the story. So I thought,
Right. Yeah.
okay, I'll go. I'm happy with that.
You could just edit. You could just like take your editing shears to the quote and just have fantastic. And
Well,
just
I could if I,
on your posters, fantastic Peggy Seeger. You know,
yeah, I couldn't be so crass.
no, no, you couldn't. No,
Even I couldn't.
no indeed. But yeah, I mean, I've sung epic. I sing a lot of the Gordon Hall epic ballads, and I sang one at. I mean, it was at a place that was like hardened ballad territory. The traditional singing weekend up at Killarney,
Oh
up
yeah,
in near Aberdeen, and I sang Gordon Hall's "The Plains of Waterloo," and which can last 12 minutes if you wish. And yeah, someone did come up to me and say, I'm not really a fan of long ballads, but I loved that. It was absolutely fantastic. And I think if you just sing it well, if it's interesting enough and you sing it well, then that's the job done. It doesn't matter about how long it is.
yeah, absolutely. I mean that I've actually had similar things about not just ballads, folk song in general. I love it when people come up and say, "I don't really like folk music, but that was okay."
Yeah, I haven't had that happen yet, actually. I've had the ballad
And
thing.
many times actually, I've had that happen
There
quite a
you
few
go.
times.
There you go. Normally, if I'm singing folk songs to non people who are not well versed in folk songs, for example, or non folkies, it's normally the reaction normally is shock and horror as you sing John Barleycorn at them, and it's own and the look of
Yes.
horror on their faces until the last couple of verses when they twig what's going on. It's that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Still, but yeah,
So I think I've done it now. I think I've done everything I had to say. I've managed to
there we go.
spin it out to the usual interminable
Yeah.
length.
That's fine. So you have recorded this twice. If we go to recommended listening for the revival, it's on two of your albums. Is it the exact same version? Have you tweaked anything in between the two?
Yeah, to be no, no, I didn't really do anything. I mean, there was, I think the first album was out of print, and I just thought, well, I'm still singing this ballad and I want it to be available. I was doing Songs of Trial and Triumph, which is an entire album of child ballads anyway, and
Okay.
I just thought it's such a strong ballad, I want it to be on there. So no, I didn't change anything really. I like to think I sang it better after a gap of 20 years, but I've never listened to the two of them side by side, so I wouldn't know.
Well, there we go. Yeah. So if anyone wants to track it down, it's 1992, The Seeds of Time, available on CD, I think possibly, but I have a cassette which I've digitized myself, so I can
I
listen to
don't
it.
think Seeds of Time ever came out on CD.
You're not okay. I'm going mainly Norfolk
I
says
don't think
CD.
it did.
Okay, in that
Yeah,
case,
well, go.
it's definitely cassette anyway. So that's there. Any other songs we've covered so far? Lovely Joan, we did that on the podcast on the Patreon, and that's about it. So yeah, the Seeds of Time on cassettes, and then in 2008 your CD Songs of Trial and Triumph, an album of child ballads. And yep, it's on there. And then we've also got Chris Coe. In 2001, she made an album called A Wiser Fool, and it's on there with the sleeve notes we have referred to a couple of times. And then
Yes.
the only other one that we know about is a woman called Catherine Campbell, who recorded the Harris version. And the CD it's on is a CD called The Songs of Amelia and Jane Harris. This has come up a couple of times on the podcast before because, for example, I don't know, I can't remember which song it is. There's one song on it that we've covered that she's the only person who's ever recorded it because it's
Wow.
that. I can't remember which one it is. I'm looking at the sleeve note. I'm looking at the track listing. Can't remember. It doesn't matter. But anyway, Catherine Campbell, the CD is The Songs of Amelia and Jane Harris, and it is a companion to the book, The Song Repertoire of Amelia and Jane Harris, edited by Emily Lyle, 2002.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that the
the
book
one
that
I
you...
have in my hand.
And that's the one you were talking about earlier. So there we go. So it's a whole
Yeah, and
out...
actually, Catherine Campbell just sings the four-verse fragment. She's obviously being completely authentic to the source, and she also sings the tune actually from this Harris manuscript, as opposed to the one that's in Child, with that one different note that I experienced a complete train crash on trying to reproduce.
That's right. And so one may be tempted to refer to that as the original tune, if you want to call it that, but it's certainly there. And yeah, there's some sleeve notes from her, but it says, uh, yeah, it's just talking about the fact that it's the fragment and a bit of the plot. And it says that there are mention of kings of Eastmuirland and Westmuirland in a book called The Complaint of Scotland, attributed to Robert Wedderburn and Sir David Lindsay, which is a book dated 1549.
Oh, that's interesting. I know that that's sort of evidence for the existence of several ballads back in the 16th century. I didn't know that there was something that was possibly identifiable as false Foodrage there.
Yeah.
Well done, Matt. I missed that.
So yeah, just the mention of kings of Eastmuirland and Westmuirland. So, and also said there is closely related ballad in the Scandinavian tradition. And just as a side note, I've brought this up on the podcast before a few times. I do have a copy of Prior's Ancient Danish Ballads translated, and in there, I haven't had a chance to go through it, but there is a ballad called Young William, which we're pretty sure is that one. Characters of
Yeah.
young William, Dame Margaret, young Swend of Voldislev. So it's in there, but I haven't had a chance to go through it because it's 64 verses, and I haven't got the time. But I may do one day. But otherwise, yeah, there's a mention of in the Danish one, but otherwise that's it. Brian Peters times 2, Chris Coe times 1, Catherine Campbell times 1. I will put links to all of those in the program notes, in the episode notes. But yeah, I think we've done. And,
I think we have.
and that was very good. So yeah, an excellent ballad. If barely sung anymore, because I'm pretty sure that Catherine Campbell has effectively not retired, but she worked at the University of Aberdeen, I think, as well, and she moved away from that, and so I don't think she's sort of around anymore on the scene. We lost Chris Coe very sadly a couple of years ago, and so we need more people to sing this song.
Yeah, I'd be very happy if people took up my version.
Yeah, otherwise it's just Brian Peters flying the flag.
Yeah, I'd also be very happy if people went back to it and made up their own version.
Well, yeah, I'm probably going to make a note and do that myself at some point. But I've got a long list of, having done this podcast for a few seasons, I've now got a long list of lesser known child ballads where I've made a note to say, oh, maybe I'll have a look at that one day.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But anyway, yeah, thanks ever so much for coming on and being back on here again and doing this. This was very very entertaining indeed. Very entertaining, very enjoyable chat, and good to find out about this song and everything else. So yeah, I don't think this is your last appearance in this season. So adieu for this season. But looking at the spreadsheet, this is your last appearance on the podcast for this year.
Oh my God.
But
How am I going to manage?
how are we going to manage? By having you come on the Patreon a few times.
Okay.
Because I know we've got potentially a couple of appearances on the Patreon for you, and then in September we're doing a couple of live episodes, aren't we? Which have kind of been announced, although they've been announced in the fact that no, it hasn't been announced yet. But anyway, there's a festival happening in September, quite local for both, almost local for both of us in a way, which is quite nice. Where along with two separate singing guests for the 2 episodes, we will be doing 2 live episodes. Watch this space for news about that over the coming weeks and months. Until then, Brian Peters, thank you very much.
Pleasure as always, Matt.
The Eastmuir King and the Westmuir King and the King of Honoree, they've courted all the fair young maid all from the north country. King Eastmuir's courted her for gold, King Westmuir for her fee, but the King of Honour's won her heart, his bridal for to be. King Eastmuir swore a dreadful oath all on their wedding day, and he has sent for false Foodrage, the king all for to slay. And at the dead hour of the night, when all were fast abed, false Foodrage, so soft crept in, stood at King Connor's head. And his lady she awakened, all from a drowsy dream. She saw her bride bed swim with blood, and her good lord lay slain. Oh, spare my life, false Foodrage, until I lie to be. Spare me that I may bear the child King Honour's left with me. Well, if it be alas, he said, well nursed shall she be. But if it be a little boy, then hanged he will be. For I'll not spare him for his tender age, nor yet for his noble kin. But on the day that he is born, he'll mount the gallows pin. 24 valiant knights were set the queen for to guard, and 4 stood at her bower door to keep both watch and ward. Ah, but as the time drew near its end, she's given them beer and wine, and she has made them all as drunk as any wildwood swine. And she slipped out of the window, she's wandered out and in, and in the very swine sty the queen brought forth a son. Now they've cast lots all in the town, for who should go unto the queen, and the lot it fell on wise William, and he sent his wife for him. A favour, wise William's wife, this favour grant to me. Change your lass for my little boy that King Honour's left with me. And you will learn my gay goshawk well how to breast a steed, and I will learn your turtle dove as well to write and read. And you will learn my gay goshawk to wield the bow and brand, and I will learn your turtle dove to lay gold with her hand. And when we meet at the marketplace, we must no more avow than, Madam, how does my goshawk? Lady, how does my dove? Now when days were gone and years come on, wise William he thought long, and he has ta'en King Honour's son, and they've a hunting gone. Do you see that high castle, with walls and towers so fair? Well, if every man had back his own, of it you'd be the heir. For if you should slay false Foodrage, you'd set the wrong to right. For he has slain your father, ere you ever saw the light. And if you should slay false Foodrage, there's no man would you blame, for he keeps your mother prisoner, and she dare not take you home. So he set his bow all to his breast, he's climbed the castle wall, and there he's met with false Foodrage, a-walking in the hall. Oh, what ails you, my bonny boy? What ails you at me? For I did never do you wrong, your face I ne'er did see. Oh, hold your tongue, false Foodrage, for I know you and who you be, and he has pierced him through the heart and set his mother free. And he has given to wise William the best part of his land, and he has wed his turtle dove with the ring from off his hand.
That was Brian Peters singing False Foodrage. And that brings us to the end of this episode. What did you think? What are your thoughts on this song? I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to get in touch with me, feel free to drop me an email at intheroud@singyonder.co.uk or visit the podcast on various social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/intheroudpod. Our Instagram and Threads handle is at intheroudpod, and our Blue Sky handle is at intheroud.bsky.social. If you are enjoying the podcast, I would very much appreciate it if you would give us a little rating and review on wherever you get your podcasts from. It really helps the podcast to reach a wider audience and to help us ride the algorithm wave. I don't know where we're riding it to. Popularity? Who wants to be popular? No idea. But please do it still. Much appreciated. Thank you. In the Roud is a media partner of Veteran, the traditional music label. Although this week's song does not currently feature on any of their releases, you can find details of their extensive catalogue on their website, veteran.co.uk. That's veteran.co.uk. One last huge thanks to this week's guest, Brian Peters. Join me next week for episode 8 of this season. We'll be looking at Roud 58, which is Child Ballad number 90, Gelon Graham. My history guest will be Steve Roud, and my singer guest will be Nick Caffrey. Until then, that's it from me. Stay safe, be well, and I'll see you next time. Quinn the Roud.